between Hunter and Lee.
Good, but not as I did as a player at that particular time, you know.
As if it's broken out again. It's broken out again, and now this time a complete...
Maybe as the week goes on and leading up to the semi-final, to go up the steps, walking up the steps was the feeling of...
He was nuts. That is what they said. But Billy Bremner was not just wild. He was terrifying. Ask the legends who faced him. He was only 5 feet 5 inches tall, but somehow he scared men twice his size. What made this small man the most feared player of his time? Leeds United in the 1960s and 70s were known as Dirty Leeds. Bremner was their fearless leader. His name was born in an era when brutality was not punished. It was expected. The term negative football did not just mean being defensive. For Bremner, it meant breaking opponents down, not just on the pitch, in their heads too. He did not just play. He controlled, scared, and broke his opponents. Bremner had a plan. Every move was calculated. Constant small fouls, never-ending stamina, scaring referees, nasty verbal attacks. He was backed by a violent machine. Don Revie built a team where every foul was planned. Every stare was a warning. Opponents were truly afraid, even before the match started. Players said you could feel the fear in the tunnel. The 1974 Charity Shield clash with Kevin Keegan was infamous. Keegan had been harassed all game. Then he finally snapped. A wild brawl broke out. Both men were sent off. Bremner ripped his shirt off and threw it down. The ban, 11 games. That fight ended an era for Leeds. But let us go back further, to Dave Mackay. Mackay had broken his leg twice. 2 horrible breaks on the same bone. Bremner went for the bad leg anyway. This broke football's unwritten code. You could kick a man, but you did not target a healing fracture. Mackay grabbed him by the neck in fury. The photo went around the world. For once, Bremner looked beaten. Then there was George Best. Leeds brutalised Best. Bremner would close him down fast. Johnny Giles and Norman Hunter brought the pain. Best admitted Bremner was hard, but smart. He ran the show, rather than always throwing the fouls himself. Best respected his ability, but he stayed wary of the brute force behind Leeds. Francis Lee was different. Bremner saw Lee as a cheat. Lee One Pen became his nickname. To Bremner, diving was weakness. It was dishonesty. Their tension boiled over in 1975. Hunter and Lee had a massive punch-up. Bremner did not fight, but he built the fire that caused it. Bremner was an expert in the professional foul, tactical negativity, fake injuries, verbal warfare. He could play beautiful football, but he preferred pain. The 1970 FA Cup final replay? Experts say 6 red cards should have been shown. Bremner stayed on the pitch. In today's Premier League, VAR would destroy him. Every foul, every elbow, every insult would be caught on camera. He would not survive, but back then, he thrived. Behind all the violence, a truly elite midfielder. Incredible passing, endless stamina, total control. Billy Bremner fought legends. He broke rules. He terrified icons. He did not just want to win, he wanted to break your spirit. That is why the Premier League's toughest legends still talk about him today. Let us understand the man behind the madness. Bremner was rejected by Arsenal and Chelsea as a teenager. They said he was too short. This rejection shaped everything. Every match became a fight to prove he belonged. He developed what you might call a Napoleon complex. He was not just playing football, he was proving his right to exist in a world of bigger men. Don Revie understood this. He built Leeds around a siege mentality. Leeds against the world. Leeds against the establishment. Leeds against the southern elite. Bremner was the perfect captain for this philosophy. He was the warrior who would die for the cause. The fear was real, not exaggerated, not made up. Real terror. In the film The Damned United, Brian Clough describes opponents as terrified, trying to hide, looking for shelter, looking for protection from the physical assault they knew was coming. This was not Hollywood drama. This was reality. Danny McGrain played for Celtic. He described his first meeting with Bremner in pre-season training. McGrain thought he could outrun the older players. Then Big Billy passed him as if he was stuck in mud. This relentless stamina meant no rest for opponents. Bremner was fast. He was lasting, and he always arrived with studs showing. The components of terror were carefully planned. His physical durability meant constant running. He was described as 10 stone of barbed wire. Opponents felt choked. No time on on the ball. The reducer was another weapon. Early heavy tackles on key playmakers like George Best. This made creative players hesitate. They played with fear of injury. Referee management was crucial. Aggressive swarming of officials. Opponents felt the game was rigged against them. They learned helplessness. Verbal assault was constant. Endless berating of opponents like Franny Lee. This broke concentration. It provoked retaliatory red cards. The Kevin Keegan rivalry represents a violent changing of the guard. By 1974, Leeds were the reigning champions, but ageing. Liverpool, led by Keegan, were the rising power. The collision at Wembley was not just a fight, it was a cultural moment that ended the Dirty Leeds era. The context matters. Don Revie had left for the England job. Brian Clough was now Leeds manager. Clough had spent years calling Leeds cheats. Now he was their boss. He gathered the players. He told them to throw their medals in the bin. They had been won unfairly. He ordered Bremner to clean up his act, shed the Dirty Leeds image for Wembley. Bremner did the opposite. He walked onto the Wembley turf wanting to prove Leeds' dominance through the only language they valued, violence. If the Keegan rivalry was about generations, the feud with Dave Mackay was a civil war between two Scotsmen. The 1966 incident at White Hart Lane produced the most iconic photograph in British football history, but the context reveals a darker side to Bremner's tactics. To understand Mackay's rage, you must understand his injury. In December 1963, Mackay broke his leg in a challenge at Old Trafford. The sound of the bone snapping was heard in the stands. He recovered. Then he broke the same bone again 9 months later. For a footballer in the 1960s, a double leg break was often career-ending. Mackay's return in August 1966 was miraculous, but he was understandably sensitive about it recurring. The match between Tottenham and Leeds was the season opener. Bremner knew Mackay's weakness. He tested the Iron Man immediately. The incident began with a throw-in where Mackay pushed Bremner over. As they scrambled up, Bremner launched a tackle. Crucially, Mackay said Bremner did not target the right leg, which was closer. Instead, Bremner came across the right leg to deliberately kick the bad left leg. In the unspoken rules of the era, this was the ultimate sin. You could kick a man, but you did not target a recovering fracture. The reaction was captured by photographer Montefresco. Mackay grabbed Bremner by the scruff of the neck, lifting him off his feet. The image shows Mackay's face twisted in fury. Bremner appears to grimace with hands raised in surrender. While history sees this as Bremner cowering, the reality is different. Bremner was bracing for a punch that never came. Mackay later said he had never been so angry in his life. He could have killed him. The incident established a hierarchy. Bremner was the king of the jungle against almost everyone, but Mackay was the apex predator. Even George Best, when asked for his toughest opponent, bypassed Bremner and cited Mackay. Best noted that when Mackay broke his leg, he got up as if it was a slight knock. Bremner's attempt to scare Mackay failed, but the fact he targeted the broken leg reinforced his reputation as a player without boundaries. The rivalry between Leeds and Manchester United was the defining contest of the era. At its heart was the clash between the genius of George Best and the destructive force of Billy Bremner. This rivalry shows negative tactics being used to stop technical brilliance. George Best was the most fouled player of his generation. Leeds were his most enthusiastic tormentors. Players from the era frequently mention black and blue ankles as a standard souvenir from matches against Bremner and Hunter. Best recalled the 1965 FA Cup semi-final as a sordid shambles where football was secondary to survival. Bremner's role was to close down space. Best thrived on rhythm and balance. Bremner's low centre of gravity and explosive speed allowed him to arrive at Best's feet the moment the ball did. If he could not win the ball, he ensured Best felt the contact. But Best offered a fascinating view of Bremner. When discussing his perfect 11, Best selected Bremner for midfield. He said Bremner was the heartbeat of Revie's great Leeds side. Hard as nails, but never kicked me. He left that to his partner in crime, Johnny Giles. This quote is revealing. It suggests high tactical sophistication within the Dirty Leeds machinery. Bremner, as captain, directed the press and the intimidation. He often herded opponents into areas where Giles or Hunter could deliver the heavy challenge. Bremner was the architect. Giles was the killer. This protected Bremner from punishment while ensuring the terror was maintained. The effectiveness is evident in the records. In August 1966, Leeds beat Manchester United 3-1. While Best scored, he was largely stopped by the Leeds midfield stranglehold. Bremner and Giles cut off the supply lines to Dennis Law and Bobby Charlton. Best respected Bremner's ability to play. Billy could also play a bit, pulling the strings in midfield, but he remained wary of the brute force behind Leeds. The roles were clear. Bremner was the director and harasser. High-energy pressing, verbal intimidation, tactical fouling. Johnny Giles was the killer. Late tackles, physical revenge, reducers. Norman Hunter was the sweeper, cleaning up anything that bypassed the midfield. His nickname was Bites Your Legs. Known as one of the hard men alongside Nobby Stiles and Ron Harris. The rivalry with Francis Lee was different. It was ideological. Lee played for Manchester City and later Derby County. He represented a style of play that Bremner found disgusting. The theatrical winning of penalties. Franny Lee held the English record for penalties scored in a season. His nickname was Lee One Pen. To Bremner and the stoic Leeds squad, diving was weakness. It was dishonesty. Bremner publicly and privately hated Lee. During Brian Clough's disastrous time at Leeds, he noted the squad viewed Lee as a diver. Bremner had labelled him a little cheat. This hatred was fuelled by the Clough-Revie dynamic. When Clough was at Derby with Lee, he championed them as the moral opposite to Dirty Leeds. Bremner took this personally. The rivalry was made worse by the 1972 title race. Derby beat Leeds to the title. This denied Revie the double, a failure that haunted the Leeds captain. The boiling point came in November 1975, a match between Derby and Leeds at the baseball ground. While the physical fight was between Norman Hunter and Francis Lee, Bremner was the spark. The atmosphere was toxic, a legacy of Bremner's years of hating Lee. Hunter and Lee exchanged punches in what is considered the mother of all football fights. Both were sent off and continued scrapping into the dressing rooms. While Bremner did not throw the punches, his leadership had created the environment where such violence was inevitable. The term negative, when applied to Bremner, requires examination. In the 1970s, negative was a charge made by the press against teams that refused to entertain. Leeds were capable of amazing football. The 7-0 demolition of Southampton is often cited as proof of their total football ability. However, under Bremner's captaincy, they often chose winning over beauty. Bremner was an early master of what is now called game management. He understood that disrupting the opponent's feelings was as effective as a tackle. The 1970 FA Cup final replay between Leeds and Chelsea at Old Trafford is widely seen as the most brutal game in English history. Modern referee David Elleray reviewed the footage. He said 6 red cards and 20 yellow cards should have been given. Bremner was at the heart of this carnage. In this match, negative football meant refusing to yield space. Bremner kicked, shoved, and scared his way through 120 minutes. The fact he stayed on the pitch shows his aura. Referees were often too terrified to send him off. They feared backlash from the Leeds team. This immunity let Bremner operate outside the rules, a negative influence on the game's integrity, but positive for Leeds' results. Placing Billy Bremner in the modern game shows how football has been cleaned up. In the Premier League era, Billy Bremner would likely be banned constantly. VAR scrutiny would catch everything: the niggle, the studs down the Achilles, the off-the-ball punch. The Keegan brawl would result in a minimum 10-game ban and police involvement. The tackle on Mackay, often called robust in 1966, would be a straight red card today for endangering safety. Bremner's constant berating of referees would lead to yellow cards for dissent within minutes under new Premier League rules. However, modern stats might appreciate him too. His passing range, interception numbers, and distance covered would likely be elite. He was a box-to-box midfielder before the term existed. The tragedy of his legacy is that the violence hides the fact he was a footballer of priceless precision passing. Billy Bremner's career proved that will can beat physics. Standing 5'5", he should have been pushed aside in the brutal world of 1960s English football. Instead, through supreme skill and terrifying aggression, he became its defining figure. His rivalries paint a portrait of a man who fought on many fronts. Against Keegan, he fought the future, trying to beat the new commercial era into submission at Wembley. Against Mackay, he fought the hierarchy of toughness, breaking the sacred codes to prove he feared no one. Against Best, he fought genius, using a systematic black and blue strategy to level the field. Against Lee, he fought for his own twisted morals, punishing what he saw as the dishonesty of the diver. To call Bremner negative is to miss his objective. He was a winner in a war zone. He terrified opponents, not just because he might break their legs, but because he could outplay them while doing it. In the clean corridors of the modern Premier League, he would be an outcast, a relic of a darker age. But in the context of his time, he was the ultimate winner, a man who ensured that if Leeds United were to go down, they would take everyone with them. The wee man left a complicated legacy. He was worshipped at Leeds, hated everywhere else. He won 2 league titles, 1 FA Cup, 2 League Cups, 54 caps for Scotland, but he is remembered more for violence than trophies, more for fear than football. His career proves that intimidation was once a valid tactic, that referees could be scared into submission, that breaking unwritten codes could go unpunished. The game has moved on, but his ghost still haunts English football, a reminder of when football was war. Billy Bremner fought legends, broke rules, terrified icons. He did not just want to win, he wanted to break your spirit. That is why the Premier League's toughest legends still talk about him.